Talk about the proverbial hard act to follow, right? Thanks, Frank. He's amazing, just amazing. Has anyone said to you recently, things are so quiet and status quo in my life, I am so bored, right? Not likely. There is no doubt we are living in one of the most challenging times in modern history across all the domains of our lives. One thing is for sure, we wake up each day in a new world where there's no control, no certainty of what's coming next or how to plan for tomorrow, and definitely no status quo. I know this feeling well, because when I train for an Ironman race, I never know what the trail will bring. So I've learned to embrace uncertainty. You know, when we're all just struggling to get through each day without giving into some crisis or major flare-up, our best efforts to balance the losses that we experience with the possibilities we might see can easily slip away. So often we find ourselves operating on what I'll call autopilot. Visualize a pilot in a plane. When he gets ready to put the plane into autopilot mode, he takes his hands off the wheel. He's not in control. This is very similar to how we operate when we're on autopilot, giving in to the habitual unconscious reactions that shape the hundreds of choices and decisions we make every day. Sure, we're getting things done. You know, we're effective. But are we really making conscious choices that leverage all the possibilities in our lives? Or are we just checking boxes? Let's imagine this situation. Your husband, your spouse, has a friend who's going through a very difficult time in his life. So he comes to you to ask for your advice and guidance about how he can best support his friend during this challenging time. Now, you want to be open, right? You want to listen. You want to hear him out. As he starts to outline his idea, big red flags go off in your mind. You're going, no, this is never going to work. Where did he get this idea? What is he thinking? So now autopilot is in full operational mode. So what do? You react, you interrupt, you tell him why his idea won't work, and then you explain to him what he should do instead. Have you ever found yourself doing this? Has anyone ever done this to you? I hate that when that happens, and it happens all the time at work and in our personal lives. And when it does, the other person shuts down, and you can be sure it'll be a long time before they ask for your help again. So what could be different here? You could have heard him out. You could have asked him questions to help direct his thinking to a more relevant solution. But that's not what you did. Instead, you interrupted, you didn't listen, you imposed your thinking on him instead of helping him create a solution that he could feel ownership in. So autopilot has hijacked this conversation now and has totally shut off possibility. Now, can you see how easily that happened? I mean, it happens to us all the time. And possibilities slip away when we focus on what was asked for, which in this case is advice and guidance, instead of what was needed, which is building capacity and connection. With the best of intentions, you let autopilot take over. You lost the opportunity to genuinely connect with him, and you lost the opportunity to build capacity in yourself and in him to handle similar issues in the future. You are shortchanging everyone in this transaction because you chose to react rather than thoughtfully respond. It was your natural inclination to take the easy way out, to let autopilot take over. And autopilot creates blind spots, and it shuts off choice. Now, don't misunderstand. It's very easy to see how this could happen. And we need autopilot to function in our lives. 90% of our daily responses are habitual and unconscious, and that's fine when you're brushing your teeth or you're tying your kid's shoes. but not when you need to make conscious choices and connections with others. With all the demands on our time, and with so much going on, so many changes in our daily worlds, it's very easy to let our responses and to want to be thoughtful and deliberate, but to let that slip away when we react instead of responding to people and situations. You know, the biggest issue for all of us is that autopilot is the tool of choice when we're stressed and overwhelmed. I mean, come on, really, how many of you aren't stressed and overwhelmed at least a dozen times a day, right? Oops. I didn't mean to do that yet. Well, I can tell you, I was stressed and overwhelmed before I walked out on the stage today. Autopilot is very seductive when we're in the line of fire. It masquerades as experience and effectiveness, but it creates just the opposite effect, shifting our focus on what to fix, and that limits our choices. So if you can recognize this, be more aware of it, it allows you to add perspective and to shift your focus instead to an outcome that balances loss with possibility. Let me share with you another example, which might be very familiar to those of you who lead and influence at work. So, you have been working on a very exciting strategic initiative with your team that has high visibility in the organization. Your team is psyched. They are so excited and energized about this project. It's been their focus for several months now. Everybody in the organization is talking about it, and even your peers are starting to take note of the exposure that this has given you and your team in the company. Your boss invites you to a meeting, which you fully expect is to congratulate you and your team on the hard work and contributions they've made. You walk into her office, ready for those high fives, and she throws you a curveball. The project is off the table. The CEO has a new focus and wants to take a different direction. You are stunned. You can't believe it. You know your team will be demoralized and demotivated by this turn of events, and you worry about what this might mean for you in the organization. And you're thinking, what a loss. So now what do? Well, let me share with you a personal perspective, because this situation is very similar to what I experience when I'm training for an Ironman triathlon. So for those of you who don't know what an Ironman is, it's a long-distance triathlon. It starts with a 2.4-mile open water swim. Like that isn't long enough, right? Followed by a 112-mile bike, and I know I have some Ironman compatriots in the audience, so they'll appreciate this, and you end the day with a full marathon. It's a very long day. And, you know, if you're old and slow like me, yeah, it's a really, really long day. Really long day. This is a photograph of an Ironman swim start. I'm in there someplace. I'm really not quite sure where, but. So me and 2,000 of my fellow athletes in the water at 6:45 in the morning, waiting for the gun to go off and start the race. To get ready for this, I trained for at least 9 months, often twice a day. I pushed my body to limits I never thought possible. I paid the price for neglected relationships, experienced pain and suffering. Yeah, there's a lot of pain and suffering. I'm going to share a secret with you, just between the 730 of us that are in this theater today. When I first decided I was going to train for Ironman, I was thinking, wow, it would be so cool and sexy to say, I'm an Ironman, right? Little did I know how much pain and suffering was going to be involved in the process. No one told me about that. So now I've did 1, and now I've done 6, and I'm training for my 7th. So clearly, I have not figured this pain and suffering thing out, right? And as I stand on this stage in front of you today, I have a broken toe, a dislocated shoulder, But that's a very long story that involves a bottle of William Sellium Pinot Noir, so we'll talk about that some other time. So back to my story. I make sacrifices across every area of my life to get ready, only to arrive at the event and realize that literally nothing is guaranteed. Because race day will surely throw me a curveball, and I will at some point have to balance loss with possibility. Because regardless of how hard I've trained, I need to rely on my ability and preparedness to navigate through uncertainty. What if someone kicks me during the swim and knocks off my goggles, and now I'm totally blind in the water? That usually happens at the beginning, too, of the swim. What if I get a flat on my bike? Or two? What if the running shoes that felt great a week ago are now giving me these giant blisters that are making me wince with every step? When things like this happen in a race, and they always do, I could throw up my hands and say, you know what, just not meant to be, it's just not my day, and take myself out of the game. And let me tell you, I've done that before, and it is so demoralizing and disappointing, not just to me, but to everyone who supported me along the way. And let me tell you, it takes a small army to get me across the finish line. Or I could look at it differently and say, no, I've invested way too much to give in and give up. I'm going to take the progress I've made, and I'm going to find a way to cross that damn finish line. Possibility, not loss. So how does this apply to your project that was jettisoned by the CEO? Look, we all need to deal with curveballs like this. And in today's uncertain and changing business environment, this type of curveball is not that unusual. I'm sure lots of you in the audience can identify with that example. It's very easy for something like that to happen. When you're working on a major project, you're focused on your plan, you're keeping your team on track, right? But when things change, and you know they will, it's normal to get thrown off, to get discouraged and disappointed. But that's exactly the opposite of what your team needs from you right now. So what do you do? Well, if you're on autopilot mode, you could say, all that work for nothing, and fall back on your habitual reaction that says, well, just business as usual, too bad, we'll just go on to the next thing. Or instead of seeing this as a loss, you could look at it from a possibilities mindset and think, how can I make this turn of events something that would really be appreciated and would stand out in the organization? How can I help my team make this something that they would continue to feel proud of? And instead of looking at the problem and wondering where the solution will come from, ask yourself, what are my strengths? What are the best tools I have at my disposal to move my team forward? I like to think of approaching situations like this as stripping them for parts. Not throwing everything away and starting all over, but repurposing what's there and what's good and useful to move your team forward. In the heat of the moment, you may not consider these questions, but they will help you think differently to balance loss with possibility. And when we stop to think and to question our automatic responses, we create a much broader portfolio of options because autopilot shuts off choice. We know from neuroscience that taking a positive approach to dealing with issues like this actually impacts brain cognition and structure. So we are building capacity to handle future issues more effectively. We are actually training our brain. At the same time, we are creating solutions that have greater and more lasting impact. And I know this as well from my Ironman experience, that what I choose to do sets the stage for what happens next. And it creates conditions for success down the road. Look, it can be very difficult in this uncertain world we live in to approach your life and your work from a possibilities mindset. Uncertainty can put you on the defense, avoiding risk instead of embracing opportunity. Uncertainty can also knock you off your game, leading to exhaustion and resignation. You give in and then you give up. But uncertainty can also be a gift because it releases you to look at challenges from a place of what can be and not a place of resignation. During my Ironman experience, I discovered my capabilities and vulnerabilities, and I learned to see the what is possible in any situation. That transformational experience now allows me to help others see what's possible for them. Here's my challenge to all of you. When you are faced with the unrelenting uncertainty of the world we live in, when you are in the line of fire, is to live life balancing loss with possibility. The Ironman motto is, anything is possible, and I know that to be true. Thank you.